Hey, what's up guys, my name is Flashy and today I'm going to show you how you can create this artwork. I guess I don't even know how it looks like because I haven't created it yet. I will show you how to create it. Basically, if you don't know how to get the models, if you don't know where to put the textures in, and really offer a basic understanding for how all of this works. I'm gonna try to explain, all the steps I'm gonna do. If I skip anything, I'm really sorry. This is my first tutorial, I've never done it. But a lot of you guys ask me to do it. You can ask me any questions, I will read every comment. And I'm trying to combine, knowledge from various sources together. Alexis did a great tutorial series on Blender with 3ds Max, but you probably don't have 2K bucks lying around every year, so you probably don't want to work with it. So I'm basically translating a lot of things he showcased into Blender. I will also have to credit a lot of people who did Blender basic tutorials, like, if you haven't created the donut yet, go create the donut from Blender Guru. It's really beginner friendly. I also got a lot of help from a guy called Lambosado who gave me a lot of great tips. You might follow him on Instagram. So let's actually jump into the tutorial. First we're going to start with the tool that extracts all the models. It's called PS2LS. You can download it here. Just extract it into a folder of your choice. I chose mine already. Then you will need the assets themselves. You can find them on the Daybreak forums. Just download this Player Studio install. I think that's the easiest way to get them. It's 9 gigabytes. If you extract them, that's I think almost 20. And also what you need is a tool to open DDS files in GIMP. GIMP itself, obviously, and Blender itself. So all the tools we are going to work with in this tutorial are completely free. So yeah, that's pretty cool actually, looking back from 2K12 or something, how far all of this has gone. And yeah, let's actually start with PS2LS. As I said, just unpack the folder and you won't have these folders. These are just my unpacked models. And you will jump in and it'll ask you to load the assets from like the test server or the live server, whatever you have installed. You don't want to do that, and the reason is because the assets, since the DX11 update, are in a pack2 format, and yeah, PS2LS just can't read it, and there isn't any tool out there yet that I know of. But I heard that some guy or some guys are working on it, but I don't have any further information than that. I think the furthest we can get is actually 2K16. There are also 2K13 models flying around somewhere. So let's actually get into PS2LS. I already opened it and basically find the assets we extracted. Yeah, basically I'm just gonna open all of them. And you just basically delete all the other files from the Player Studio, just keep the pack files. Let's just look for any model. I'm gonna because it's really easy, so you can basically, like, if you see how to extract one model, you can do it for everything. Yeah, let's just extract that one. Just go on export, and yeah, just keep it like that. And then just get a folder of your choice, extract it there. And here we have our air-to-air missile with the textures, and obviously the OBJ that we are gonna work with. And that's basically it already. Just if you want a reaver, grab a reaver. I would probably use the base chassis, load LOD0. I think the LOD1 and 2 are a bit less detailed, and I use more for like distances, etc. But what we also need is a camo, or if you want to use a camo, we can find it here. And you basically have to look for TC. Select all these assets, sort them by type, and we will look for DDS files. Whatever, African forest, yeah, sounds cool, get that. And put it into here again. But yeah, sometimes they are black and white, don't know why. Don't know how to fix it. Just gotta find someone that has a texture that's not black and white. And yeah, let's just play with that. So let's actually jump into Blender, delete the default cube with the delete key on the keyboard, obviously. And let's import a model we want to use it. I will probably go with the mosquito, yeah, right here. And there you have the mosquito-based chassis. Just get that in there. So Blender controls very quickly. If you press down your mouse wheel or your middle mouse button, whatever, you can rotate around. If you press Control, you can zoom in smoothly. If you roll your mouse wheel, you can obviously zoom in and out as well. And if you hold down Shift while holding down the mouse button, you can actually move around. So yeah, and now that this is imported, the first thing I do is press Tab to go into edit mode. And now this shows all the vertices this model consists of. And you know, if I grab one of these, kind of strange that not all these lines are highlighted, because they should all connect to this one point. And if I press G to grab it and move it up, kind of strange, not how it should behave if you want to really, you know, play around with a model. So press A, go to Mesh, and go to Cleanup, and go to Merge by Distance, because we had multiple points being at the same spot, and you know, this just merges them, so we can actually, you know, play around with this model if we want to, and you know, have a bit more control over it. So let's actually texture this. Therefore, we will go into shading, and we also already got a principled BSDF setup connecting into the surface material output, and that's what we want. So let's just go into our folder where the river is, where the mosquito is. Get base chassis and get the texture in. Not really though. Let's delete that again. We can't really use this texture in Blender. We have to convert it to a PNG because it's some weird DDS shit. And that's what we're going to use GIMP for. And also, as I said before, this DDS plugin, there's also a Photoshop plugin if you want to use that. But obviously GIMP is free, so we're just going to stick with that. Not going to explain how to install it because it would make this tutorial way too long, but it's actually not that hard and it's really well explained in here. So let's go on. So we just put it in here, just Control-Shift-E, don't need to edit it, and find PNG, there we go, click on Export, and Export. I already did that, so I won't do it right now, but it'll be in the same folder. Then press Ctrl-W or click here the X, get the other one in there. This one we don't need really, because I haven't found a use, and Alexis, which when it comes to shading, this tutorial is basically a translation from his tutorial into Blender. We both didn't find a use for it, so we will stick to this one. This is the normal with the N. This is obviously the base color with the C, and this one, the Specular Map with the S. Just put this one in here, you know, same thing, Ctrl-Shift-E, export it to PNG, etc. That's basically all we want to do. So let's hop back into Blender with our textures being converted to PNG. I put them in a small little folder, you ignore that one. And let's actually get this in there. And this, with the C or base color, put that into the base color, and yeah, there we go. But as you see, if I go into the viewport shading, which is going to basically how the model looks if we were to blend to render it, it is kind of flat, you know. Now, got a lot of surface imperfections, but they are really just, you know, painted on there. They are not really, you know, part of the surface itself. You know, the light doesn't interact with them. So what we want to have is a normal map, and this normal map is going to bring us a lot more details in terms of, you know, the shadows and how the light interacts with the model, without making the number of, you know, vertices or faces higher. So yeah, that's pretty cool actually, and in this case it's also going to improve how the surface imperfections will look. Basically put that in there with the N, make it non-color, press Shift A, and let's search for normal map. There we go, just plug it into the color of that, the normal and the normal, and that looks terrible, but we can play with this a bit, and yeah, that's pretty cool already. And you see how this instantly looks different to the one before. How the light is reflected of the model really is impacted by these, you know, scratches on the surface, etc. I really like this. It's way more realistic. And you know, if you want a comparison, way too flat, way better. So This is already pretty cool, and you can obviously get away with this, you know. In this case, that's in my opinion already enough, you know. I haven't used, you know, the specular map in any of my works yet. In some cases, you have a model that is, you know, really metallic on some parts, and maybe a bit more rough on other parts of the model. So that's gonna be, yeah, not that perfect, because we basically want a map that's going to be mapped on the model that's going to control the specular. How much light does the model like refract? In this case, let me make that more visible for you. Make it black. You know, no light is reflected off the model. If I improve the increase the specular, it's going to be more light. And we basically have a map, and if the map is black, then it's gonna reflect no light, and if it's white, it's gonna reflect more light. And then we also have a map that controls the roughness, and the roughness basically controls how is the light reflected of the model. Now if I go to this view mode, so we can actually have a bit of it, you see that the light doesn't scatter from the model, and we can really, you know, have it like a mirror, and if we make it more rough, you know, we can't see it at all really in the model. And that's what we want to control. And also we have parts of the model that are emissive. You know, the model itself emisses light, and you know that we will also want to control with the map. So let's actually get this specular map. If you're a beginner, you can basically skip forward if you want to follow this tutorial, and this is too complicated for you, but I'm gonna try to explain it anyway. So let's get going. If you take a look at this, okay, let's make it like that for a second. If we want to have a look at our specular map, you see this is all red, this is a bit green, and normally there's also blue. In this case I can't find it. In this case the model doesn't, but I prepared a model that has blue in it just so I can showcase that to you as well. So what do we want? We want the red parts to be really glossy. So they don't have any roughness at all. This is turned down. So we want to create a map out of it where the red is dark, like black, so the roughness is low, and where this green part is white, so the roughness is high in this part. So how are we gonna do that? Let's split it up in. Let's split the RGB up. Make the red like that, and let's control it via a color ramp. Obviously I press Shift A to get that menu up again. So let's see what we're gonna do. Just play a bit with the curves so we have the result that we want. Take that one. See, we can basically control how it looks. Yeah, this is more like it. And as you see, it's not gonna be perfect. There's a lot of imperfections. In my opinion, it doesn't matter that much. But if you want it to be like perfect, you can also go into GIMP, put it in there, and go into colors, go into desaturate, mono mixer, and say, okay, I want the red to be black, green and blue to be white. Or in another case, I want like green to be white and the others to be black. Or if you want like a really glossy map, you can make it that. So you can actually have a good control over how these things look, and it's gonna be basically perfect without, you know, these ramps controlling it. But I like it because I actually have a lot of control over it. So let's actually plug in the base color again and put that into the roughness. Increase the specular for a bit. You see that these parts are really glossy, while this part isn't that much. You know, the light is scattered. You can't really see the reflection that well in it as in the other parts you can. And let's go to another channel, and this is the green channel that, as I said before, is this. Pardon. Is this part. And we want to map where the green part is white and the other thing is black. That already looks pretty good if you ask me. But let's control with a color ramp anyway. That's not what we want. I think maybe like if you wanted a sharper edge, maybe I don't want the edge to be that sharp actually, after all. But yeah, let's put that into the specular, and you see that a lot more light is reflected off this and basically not from this, which I don't really like. So let's make it a bit more like this. So we also have a bit of light reflection in here, but basically it's you who controls it. If you don't like how this looks, maybe this is too reflective, this body, then you can just go into the color ramp and control it basically. Just a tiny bit. I think it looks fine that way. I like it to be a bit more glossy. So yeah, in the end you can control it and make it look however you want. Let's actually go into the blue channel. And in this case, we don't have any blue in the specular map, if you remember. But I already set one thing up for you. Save it really quickly. And just to showcase how that works. And it's this model. I applied a basic texture to it already. And I imported the specular map already. So let's split up the RGB. Here we go, and get the blue channel into a color ramp again. This time the blue channel, and then let's put it into the emission. You see this gets instantly brighter, and if I make the world itself darker so there isn't any extra light, you see this thing still stays bright. I can also change the color of it, like into a blue. That's probably better fitting. And if I now switch to the render engine that is more physically accurate, it calculates light bounces, etc., called cycles, then you see this light also interacts with the model itself and other models. So it basically illuminates the scene itself, which is pretty cool and pretty handy. So in this case, with the mosquito, we don't have that, and so we don't need to worry about that in this case. Yeah, now what we want is a camo. Now we already extracted one, and if we put it in there, we don't for some reason don't need to convert this. Don't know why, it just works. Don't ask me. But of course we want a mix between both textures. And how are we gonna do that is we mix RGB, put these two bad boys in there, color 1, color 2, and get that into the base color, and you see it just fades them in, which we don't want. But we want to have a mask that goes in here that controls this factor. And which is the mask? It's the normal map actually. It's duplicated with Shift D. Get that up there. If I press the mouse wheel button down, you can actually move around here, by the way. Not what we want. And yeah, let's see what is actually the mask. The mask is the blue channel of this normal texture. Everything that's blue is basically everything that's blue is basically our camo, and the rest, the yellow parts, are the normal texture, the normal base color we use. So switch it to sRGB, and then you have this. You have another separate RGB. Get that into here. Get a color ramp to control it. Get the blue thing in here, and get this one into the factor. And let's play around until we think it looks fine. You know, it has this real used look to it, and I really like it because it obviously flies through electrical storms, etc. But if you want a cleaner look, you can always use the GIMP approach that I showed you earlier. If you have, like, if it looks like that for you, kind of weird, then you obviously just switch up the two colors in here. And yeah, that looks fine already, but I think I want a bit more detail. And yeah, how to get that? You know, this texture, this camo is actually perfectly scalable. So let's press Shift A again, get a mapping node, and get a texture coordinate node. Shift A obviously again. Put the UV into the vector, the vector into the vector, and now we can basically locate this texture. We can rotate it, which is kind of trippy if you animated it. And we can obviously scale it, which we want to use in here, maybe like to 5. Yeah, I really like it. This should do nothing. Yeah, it doesn't. And yeah, maybe 10 is a bit too much. I think it's really over busy. I really like 5. Let's keep it with that. It looks pretty good already, if you ask me. I think we can definitely work with that. And you know, we have the model, we textured it. You know, we can, maybe if you don't like this thing sticking out that much, you can go into sculpting, get the pose node in here, higher radius, put that down a bit. You know, you just really can play with the model. You can also into the edit mode and, you know, play with all of these other parts if you want to edit something. Yeah, you have a lot of freedom in Blender because it's a really powerful tool. But yet, let's just play with that, go back into our rendered view mode and create something. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a ground plane, Shift A, and get a plane, scale it up. I will push it back a bit, GX, GY, so we can actually move it along the axes. And you know, how do I want the ground to look? Let's go into shading again. Well, the ground is selected, and create a new one. So I think it should be a bit red. Let's make it actually a red color. Have a lot of light reflected off it, but make it not rough at all. Maybe metallic. I think that could look cool. And let's actually switch to the more physically accurate render engine called Cycles, and you will instantly see a really cool reflection on the ground. It looks like the model is levitated a bit, if I'm not wrong. Let's actually press numpad 1 so we can get a front view. It actually is perfectly on the ground, so that's good. We can also have a side view with numpad 3 and the top view with numpad 7, so that's pretty important actually. But I want the ground to have a bit texture. Yeah, it's just whatever we have lying around. And we're actually not going to use that as material because it's not really fitting. We will actually use this to have some kind of bump. So Shift A again, put it into a bump, into height, put that into the normal. And we instantly see how this affects, you know, how the light interacts with the plane. And I think that looks really cool. We can obviously adjust it however we want it to look. I don't want it affected that much because I still want the reflections kind of. And I really like this really low angle. So that's probably where I want to place the camera. Go to layout again. Have this low angle. Press Control Alt and 0, so our camera locks to our position. And you know, if we press 0 on the numpad, it'll always switch into our camera view. Let's select the camera. You can also select it here, and go into the camera options. You know, make a wider angle. Go into these object properties, and you know, adjust the rotation to whatever we like. Maybe some tilted angle, probably not. Maybe like that. Even though I like the reflection, I don't like the angle, but let's just keep it that way anyway. And it's looking pretty good already. But let's add a bit more. Let's Shift A again, add a cube. Make that a bit higher. Get into a camera again. Go to shading, select the cube, and create a new material. Let's just delete this BSDF. And that looks pretty dope already, but that's actually not what I wanted to use the cube for, because I wanted to use it as a volume. So let's just get a principled volume and plug that into the volume. And you can see nothing, but if you turn this density down, you can see, oh, this is basically just fog. And yeah, this also makes the light really volumetric, which you expect of a volume, but it's got a really low value in, like 0.05 maybe. I think that looks fine. We can also play around with the color of it, maybe have like a really warm contrast. And yeah, let's go to scene settings, make the background color somewhat. Something like that as well. Get the sun down a bit, press G to grab it. I think I really like this. Actually play around with it, maybe the light a bit more yellow. Oh yeah, that's good. Actually a bit orange. So I want to duplicate it, press Shift D, put it into this spot, make it like 500 watts. So I probably will keep that at 1K and move it a bit forward, so it actually lights up the model from the front. And make that a bit, maybe even blue. We could have a color contrast in here as well, but I don't think it fits, the vibe of the picture. I think I probably still want to have it like red, but then really also like 500. And maybe even, go into the volume again and push that density down even further. Yeah, I think that's way better already. I think we should probably add a cockpit glass. Let's go to this view mode so we don't actually render all the light bounces. We don't calculate them. And by the way, just go GPU compute in the render settings so it's a bit faster. Because I have a good GPU. If you have it as well, just use that. Yeah, let's actually get this cockpit glass in there. You can also basically just get it from PS2LS. In here, it's called Mosquito Attachment Cockpit Glass, and just move that into position. So go to front view mode with numpad 1, G, Z. Make it for the side again. Press numpad 3. With Shift and mouse where we can move the camera. G, then Y. G, then Z. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go to 7, top view. Actually looks pretty fine. I don't think it's perfect, but if we press numpad 0 again, we don't really see if it's perfect or not. And because we are in Cycles engine, we can actually use work with something called a glass BSDF. So if we select our glass, just delete that principal BSDF we got in there and get a glass BSDF, put that into the surface, and as you see, this glass is instantly see-through like we want it to be. Let's make it a bit darker actually, something like that. We could have loaded in an HDRI to have more realistic lighting, but don't want to get into that right now. I think I really like this for the amount of time we invested into it. Let's actually render this. Actually get this a bit higher. Let's make denoising on and just do a quick render of it. Should take too long, but obviously with the other engine Eevee, it's gonna take way less time to render, which is why I also used it in this farewell video. It's actually also powerful, a powerful engine, but you can't work with emissions and this glass BSDF in the same way you can do with cycles. Yet there are a lot of tricks to work around all of these, hurdles. Feel free to give me some feedback or like it. I hope you learned something. Obviously, I'm kind of a beginner myself. If you think I did explain something wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. If you think there's an easier way to do things, feel free to comment that as well. I haven't touched on, models that have different textures to it. Yeah, this mosquito has basically one texture for the whole model, but there are also other things, like if I go to the facilities, to the AMP station, that's a bad example. Here are two textures for this for one model, and you basically have to find the face. You basically have to select the face and find out which texture is for which part of the model, and this is obviously a bit harder than basically having one texture for the whole thing, like we have in this case. But yeah, let's actually save this. This looks kind of weird. Maybe make the sample size a bit higher even. And I think I will render it in 4K with higher samples so it looks better. And I'm starting to work on a fully animated Planetside short. It's gonna be one hell of a project. And yeah, I will show you the final result afterwards. I hope you have a nice day and see ya.